All right, guys, let's go ahead and go over the warm-up. We do have an assignment that we started yesterday that we need to finish today, so I'm going to ask you to go ahead and quiet down so that you can follow along as we go over the warm-up and get into the rest of the checks lab that we started yesterday. Hopefully you completed last night's homework, which was 102.1, identifying variables problem set. If you forgot, make yourself a note. You can still turn it in for late credit, but that's better than no credit. So again, make sure that you make yourself a note. The checks lab, if you don't finish it today, will be homework. It is due by 11:59 p.m. tonight. And again, just like with the first tab, there is a link to a Google form that you can submit. So you do have to kind of copy paste your answers over from one platform to the other because of the way that the school district has restricted our use of the websites we used to use. Unfortunately, now it takes us a little bit longer to get everything turned in, and it takes you a little bit longer too. So hopefully they will allow us to go back to what we were doing before. We are working on that, but for right now, you're going to have to do it the way that it's in there. But again, that's due tonight. As I already mentioned, beginning of year parent signatures, we have 3 different forms that I need a signature on. One of those being the K letter, which several of you have already turned in on paper. If you, again, have that but haven't got it signed yet, make a note somewhere. The other 2 are digital. One of them, again, is the safety contract, which is in Home Access Center. If your parent has trouble getting that signed, again, have your other parent try first. But if they can't figure that out, there is information on there on the tech, the help desk, so they can get help there, or they can reach out to me, although I can't help them get into Home Access Center. So try the tech help desk first. And then the other form is the syllabus. You received a paper copy of the syllabus, but the syllabus acknowledgement form is a Google form that is in Schoology, so you just want to make sure that your parent fills that out. Okay, so today's warm-up questions are going to kind of help us to get back into our discussions with our checks lab, and these are actually similar to some of the questions you're going to see in the conclusion section of the checks lab. But the first one says, can a hypothesis become a theory? And the second one says, can it become a law? Okay, anybody have any thoughts on whether a hypothesis can become a theory? Yes, sir.
If it is proved by evidence, then yes.
Okay, so he says yes if it's proved by evidence. Do you have a different answer? No? You agree with him? Okay, it doesn't usually happen directly. Usually it's a whole body of evidence, but yes, hypotheses can support and contribute to the development of theories. If I was going to try to put it into words, I'd say it kind of like this. Usually not directly. For a hypothesis to contribute to a theory, it must be tested and challenged many times, which is what you guys were just referring to. But then it has to be combined with other observations and tested hypotheses. So usually it's kind of that theory is going to summarize a whole bunch of hypotheses that all work together to help support that. So again, it kind of depends on that situation, but it's usually not this specific hypothesis becomes a theory. It's usually a body of evidence from a bunch of different hypotheses that support a theory. What about, can it become a law? What do we think? Yeah, the answer to that one is no. Theories can never become laws because laws form the body of evidence upon which we base theories. Laws can help with formulating theories, but theories do not develop into laws. Most of the laws that we have in science are like math equations. So it's not something that you're testing with this. So you can base your theories on the law that you know exists, but you're not going to have a theory become a law. All right, so again, you're going to see this stuff again later. It may help you to kind of make some notes. In fact, if you have the assignment open, you might see some questions down there that look kind of similar to these two. All right, so if you don't have it opened already, please reopen the Google Sheet assignment from yesterday, 102.2 checks lab. Some of you finished your tentative explanation number 3 in class yesterday, but some of you did not. Hopefully you did that at home like I suggested, but I'm going to give you a few minutes, 4 minutes specifically, to either finish that tentative explanation number 3 if you haven't yet, or hopefully you already have, and you can have a quick discussion with your group so that you guys can type in your tentative explanation number 3. Again, make sure you have that done before we move on. So you have 4 minutes to discuss with your group. Oops, go back.
We'll lunch do you have? Bro, it's like so.
All right, so you should have had enough time to type in that tentative explanation and had a quick discussion with your group if you didn't do it yesterday. So now that you've done that, I would like you to take a few minutes to compare and share your data with 1 to 2 groups around you. Everybody was looking at information about the same people, but you only got to see a small glimpse into it. You only got to see a certain number of checks. The groups around you may have seen other checks. You did not see all the checks. They did not see all the checks. So by talking to these other groups, you can gather some information from your peers and figure out if you some more information before you write that final tentative explanation. Okay, so take a few minutes and compare and share with 1 or 2 different groups around you. I'm going to set a timer, and then you can come back to your seats, and then we'll work on writing that final tentative explanation.
What happens if I compare mine to his, or his, and they're completely different than mine?
Then y'all need to talk about your evidence. As you're discussing with the groups, talk about the evidence that you have that you think supports the story that you have. See if their evidence is better than yours, or maybe yours is better. Maybe you saw a check they didn't.
And if theirs is better than
You can revise. You don't have to go back and change your other answers. You're just going to put that in your final tentative explanation. All right, guys, go ahead and talk to the other groups. Guys, hopefully you were able to get some more information from the groups around you, and maybe you have a different tentative explanation than you did before. Maybe not. Maybe they reinforced yours, but that's the point now, is that now that you've had a chance to review with your peers, I would like you to return to your group. So you're just back with your original group and discuss and formulate what you think your final tentative explanation is going to be. Whatever arguments you make, you do need to cite evidence. So you can cite evidence from the checks you had. You can cite evidence from the checks that somebody else told you about. But you need to come up with a final explanation, and then you need to record that explanation on a whiteboard. And the whiteboards are at the back of the room, on the counter in front of the calculators, and there are dry erase markers on the other side of the clock, also at the back of the room. Guys, real quick, before you go and get that stuff, listen up for just a second. A lot of people in my earlier classes spent way too much time writing everything on there like as a paragraph. You can just use bullet points. I don't need like complete sentences on the whiteboard. Okay, but I do need you to send one person from your group to get a whiteboard. Maybe a different person can grab a marker or two and bring them back to your table. You're going to not just type out that explanation, but you're going to give me the bullet points on that whiteboard, and then we'll talk about what we're doing with that in a minute. Okay, so send somebody back there. I'm going to start a timer to give y'all a little bit of time to kind of write out, to talk about and to write out that final explanation. Alright, that should be, hopefully you have something on that whiteboard now regarding what your final tentative explanation is. And what I would like you to do now is you're going to be getting up out of your seats. You don't need to bring your computer or anything with you, but you can leave the computers, you can leave the markers. You're going to go read other people's whiteboards. Did they come to the same conclusion you did? How much is similar? How much is different? When you read their board, I want you to, again, leave the marker there at your desk when you get up. That way the other groups can use it. But place a check mark beside statements you agree with, or a question mark beside any statements that you read and you're like, where'd they get that from? Okay, if you don't think there's evidence to support it, or if you think they just kind of made up some wild theory that's not truly supported by something or whatever. So again, go ahead and get up. In fact, I would suggest that you look at a board from a group you haven't talked to yet. Since you already kind of know what the groups around you think, go ahead and make your way to another part of the room. Read their board, checks, question marks. Okay, so guys, you just went through kind of a scientific process here of gathering some data, interpreting that data, coming up with your explanation for what that data meant, and then continuing to gather data and revising that explanation. That's pretty much how the scientific method works. And we even engaged in the peer review process where you talked with your colleagues to see if your explanations were consistent with theirs. So we had this whole body of data. And that's kind of the point of this activity. And as somebody just asked, no, there is no right answer. Again, if you read the checks, they all have the same handwriting, regardless of whether he wrote them or she did. It's the same person's handwriting because they're not real checks. Okay, it's all a conspiracy. So the point is more the exercise of going through what we just did, although you can make it whatever story you want. And yes, some of those explanations are more supported by data than others. So although there's not a right answer, there are good answers, bad answers, and better answers. So maybe you came up with some of those. The rest of the activity that you have there, you can work on right now with your group if you'd like. There are some discussion questions that you can do on your own, or you can talk with your group. You can look back at the warm-up for some help, but any part of this that you don't finish before you leave class today is homework. So please make sure that you get as much of it done as you can so you have as little to do when you get home. We are on a shortened period due to advisory, so you do only have 4 minutes. So you can probably answer a couple of questions. You may end up with a couple more to do at home. All right, I'm going to go ahead and let y'all get to it. If you have any questions for me, please let me know.